UK and US aviation and travel leaders call for reopening of transatlantic travel. Top leaders in aviation and travel came together ahead of the G7 meeting in Cornwall later to push for the reopening of the UK-US travel corridor. There is a clear opportunity to safely open up travel between US and UK. US and UK governments urged to take a data-driven and risk-based approach to reopening borders to travel. UK businesses are losing £23 million each day that transatlantic links remain closed. The CEOs of all airlines that offer UK-US passenger services, American Airlines, British Airways, Delta Air Lines, JetBlue, United Airlines and Virgin Atlantic, joined today with Heathrow Airport and other industry-leading CEOs in calling for the reopening of transatlantic travel, a move that will be essential to igniting economic recovery. Top leaders in aviation and travel came together ahead of the G7 meeting in Cornwall later to push for the reopening of the UK-US travel corridor. With world-leading vaccination programs in both the UK and US, there is a clear opportunity to safely open up travel between these two low-risk countries, enabling consumers on both sides of the Atlantic to reconnect with loved ones, re-establish business relationships and explore new destinations after more than a year of lockdowns and restrictions. The CEOs urged both governments to take a data-driven and risk-based approach to reopening borders to travel. A lineup of American Airlines CEO Doug Parker, British Airways CEO and Chairman Sean Doyle, Delta Air Lines CEO Ed Bastian, Heathrow CEO John Holland-Kaye, JetBlue CEO Robin Hayes, United CEO Scott Kirby, US Travel Association President and CEO Roger Dow and Virgin Atlantic CEO Shai Weiss joined forces at the panel event, hosted by Duncan Edwards, Chief Executive of British American Business. The participants spoke up after more than a year of travel restrictions that have deeply impacted the global economy and trade and tourism between the two countries. They discussed the merits of having the US on the UK's green list, which means travellers from the US would no longer need to self-isolate on arrival in the UK, as well as the benefits that would arise from the US lifting the 212F order to open up the transatlantic corridor for UK residents to enter the US. The US is the UK's largest trading partner and UK businesses are losing £23 million each day that transatlantic links remain closed. In 2019, 900,000 tons of cargo also travelled between the two countries. In the US, 63.5% of adults have received at least one dose, while about half of adults, nearly 139 million people, have been fully vaccinated. In the UK, almost 68 million have received shots, more than 75% of the country's adult population. Studies show that the vaccine programs in both countries are successfully reducing transmission and the severity of infection, plus fighting variants, and case counts in both countries continue to decline rapidly. Shai Weiss, CEO, Virgin Atlantic, commented, "There is no reason for the US to be absent from the UK Green List. This overly cautious approach fails to reap the benefits of the successful vaccination programs in both the UK and the US. While transatlantic links with the US are restricted, it's costing UK economy £23 million each day. We urge Prime Minister Johnson and President Biden to lead the way in opening the skies, making it a top priority at the G7 summit. Customers, families and businesses need to book and travel with confidence. After 15 months of restrictions, the time to act is now," Sean Doyle, Chairman and CEO, British Airways, said. As President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Boris Johnson meet this week, they must address the transatlantic ban that is separating our two low-risk countries at a major cost to our citizens and economies. We urgently need them to look to the science and base their judgments on a proper risk analysis, allowing us all to benefit from the protection offered by our successful vaccine rollouts. In the UK, this means making the traffic light system fit for purpose, including a pathway to restriction-free travel for vaccinated travellers, and getting rid of complexity surrounding amber-list countries, eliminating quarantine and reducing the number of tests passengers are required to take. John Holland-Kaye, CEO, Heathrow, said, "Connectivity between the UK and the US is one of the great engines of the global economy. The scientific data shows transatlantic travel and trade can be reopened safely, and every day that policymakers delay puts jobs, livelihoods and the economic chances of hard-working folks across our countries at risk unnecessarily. We cannot continue to keep locked up indefinitely. Politicians should seize on the successful vaccination programs in our two countries to begin looking to a future where we manage COVID rather than letting it manage us. As we see people reclaiming their lives and reconnecting with loved ones, it's clear that the infection rates of our countries indicate an extraordinarily low risk to travel between the US and the UK, provided travelers are vaccinated or can produce a negative PCR test prior to boarding a flight, said Ed Bastian, CEO, Delta Airlines. Our modeling studies conducted with Mayo Clinic put the risk of transmission on a plane traveling between the UK and US at 1 in 1 million. We're proud of the measures American and others have taken to navigate the pandemic and ensure we deliver a safe, healthy and enjoyable experience for customers as they return to travel, said Doug Parker, Chairman and CEO of American Airlines. Reopening travel between the US and UK is a critical next step in both the travel industry and the global economy's recovery. With vaccine availability continuing to expand, we know that our business and leisure customers are increasingly eager to cross the Atlantic, and we know that when they do, it will provide a major boost to the economies in the US, UK and around the world. We look forward to continuing to work with both governments as they make this important decision. Throughout the pandemic, experts have encouraged governments, businesses and the public to follow the science, said United's CEO, Scott Kirby. United and other airlines have done just that and implemented the necessary safety protocols to confidently reopen key international routes like the air corridor between our two countries. Programs like the trials of COVID-free flights between Newark and Heathrow and the U.S. Department of Defense air filtration study conducted on board United aircraft not only contributed to the body of scientific knowledge, they have demonstrated the near non-existent rates of viral transmission aboard an aircraft. And now, through mobile app, travelers can upload verified test results and vaccine records before international travel. All this with the successful leadership of vaccination efforts by both governments. No interests are served by delaying reopening of these essential air routes any longer. We are ready. The surge in travel in recent weeks has been remarkable as case counts fall and vaccination rates rise, and we're confident that demand for travel between the US and the UK would follow a similar recovery pattern with an established travel corridor between the two countries, said Robin Hayes, Chief Executive Officer, JetBlue. As international destinations have opened to travelers across our Latin America and Caribbean network and traveling has been made easier with fewer border restrictions, we've seen a notable uptick in the number of people flying to these destinations. Data has shown that people can travel safely when certain health and safety protocols remain in place, and we believe the UK should implement revised border restrictions similar to those that have already been successful in many other countries. A recent York aviation report stated that a second lost summer of international travel would result in £55.7 billion in lost trade and £3.0 billion in tourism GDP if reopening is delayed until September. If international travel remains restricted, it will cost the U.S. economy $325 billion in total losses and 1.1 million jobs by the end of 2021, according to analysis from the U.S. Travel Association. The millions of travel-supported U.S. jobs lost to the pandemic cannot be replaced without the return of international visitors, and the UK is our number one overseas travel market, said U.S. Travel Association President and CEO Roger Dow. Advancing a science-driven approach to restart international travel is crucial, and a US-UK corridor is a logical place to start because of the two countries' excellent records on vaccinations and declining infections, as well as their strong relationship. The group has encouraged the US government to consider lifting entry requirements for UK travelers who have provided a negative COVID test ahead of arriving in the US or are fully vaccinated or can present proof of recovery. On the UK side, Prime Minister Boris Johnson was asked to consider removing the need for travellers returning to the UK from green list countries to complete an expensive and time-consuming PCR test on their arrival, instead calling for lateral flow tests, used in care homes and schools, with only positive tests requiring a PCR test.